You're listening to the audio portion of Workshop Wednesdays. Workshop Wednesdays is a free live discussion about topics affecting accountants, bookkeepers, and business owners. You can join the ABBO group in Facebook to participate live Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Pacific Time. Just search for ABBO in Facebook. This podcast is brought to you by Schoolofbookkeeping.com, where you will learn, grow, and build a thriving bookkeeping practice. We have hundreds of lessons with almost every aspect of the industry. Start your free month today at Schoolofbookkeeping.com.
All right, so welcome to a workshop webinar, a Workshop Wednesday webinar. Today, we're brought to you, of course, by Schoolofbookkeeping.com, and we're joined now with 2-for-1 from ADP, Rachel and Kate. So they're going to be helping us with our first part of our workshop today, where we're going to be talking about and continuing with payroll fundamentals. So today we're going to be talking about business entity and how the owner gets paid. And Carrie, you have a nice story about that. I think we mentioned it a little bit earlier in our series with the payroll fundamentals of your journey when it came to how you got paid. We're not going to ask for specific details, but but you know, that's one of the things you consider as a business owner is, well, I mean, you go into business not to be a nonprofit. You know, you want to earn some money. How did that go for you? Like, what was your thought process around that?
Well, lucky for me, I already knew what you had to do when you ran payroll, and I knew how to do it. I just was trying to start my business, and I didn't want to get bogged down in all that. So at the time, I was, launching my business, selling QuickBooks, and the place where I left, actually, my parents retired from, they used a third-party payroll, so they never took advantage of the Intuit Assisted. So I thought, well, here's a good way to try it. It was just me for a year, and then I brought on Paula. So it was perfect for brand new starting out. I didn't need a whole lot to do. I didn't need much with it other than to do my taxes and not worry about sending in the 941, the state coupon, the quarterly, the unemployment, the federal, the W-2s. All that was done for me. So the concept of having that done for me was perfect. I was structured as a C Corp when I launched. I have since turned into an S Corp. I know that if you're self-employed, that's all different. You can't give yourself a paycheck. It's a draw. So
yeah. So let's talk about the major areas or the formulations, and maybe Kate and Rachel, maybe you could help us. Because when you talk to someone who's looking to start a payroll service, is that something that you ask, like, how are you a sole proprietor, or are you a partnership, or what how does that come up in your conversations that you have?
Yeah, so from our standpoint, it's definitely something that we ask. We try to not guide clients. Of course, we're not CPAs or accountants, and we don't pretend to be, but we do educate them on, if someone comes to us, because quite frequently sole proprietors will come to us and say, hey, I'm going to put myself on payroll. And we're like, no, don't do that. So we definitely try to at least steer them into, if you're set up in this way, you should be on payroll. If you're set up in this way, you're not. I would say the most commonly made mistake is single member LLCs that try to put themselves on payroll without being an S Corp. A lot of people don't understand as an LLC that you can be filing as an S Corp. And they also don't understand that if you're filing as a single member, it essentially means you're filing as a sole proprietorship and should not be on payroll. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing we run into.
So when it comes to, and I think that's part of the confusion, because like when people create a formulation of an LLC, you can choose then how you are filing after that. So just because you're an LLC, you could actually be a partnership,
a sole proprietorship. Yeah.
Or as a sole proprietor. So
or partner.
Like, well, just because I've got LLC at the end of my business name, I can be on payroll, right?
Mm-hmm.
No.
And not true.
So it's really just how your entity is structured. So So sole proprietor, and then you were saying partnerships, but you're saying specifically single member partnerships.
Or single member
What
LLCs.
about member
Yeah.
or what
So
about multi-member?
Single member LLCs cannot go on payroll. Sole proprietorships cannot go on payroll. Partnerships can go on payroll, as can C Corps and S Corps. It's really just the single member LLCs that I think create the most issues for people.
They don't realize single member is another way of saying sole proprietor. It's just they have the LLC on the back of their name, but it didn't do anything to allow them to get payroll. And I hear that a lot. I'm like, I want to go on payroll. I'm an LLC. And I'm like, that sounds good until I hear single member.
So a multi-member LLC, which in essence is a partnership, right? They can be on payroll. Is that correct?
Yeah, so multi-member LLC could definitely be on payroll, but they would still have to, it depends on when they file it, how they set it up for tax filing purposes, because they still would have to make the election to file as an S corporation, or, they wouldn't necessarily be able to, because the other thing is too, sometimes I think when people set up an LLC and they're under the impression that there's multiple members, they might have multiple members with the state on the LLC filing, but there's typically only one person on the filing done with the EIN and to the IRS. And so a lot of times, like I said, even though there's multiple owners, we would need to double check to make sure that it's in turn, structured as so with the IRS as well.
So then, Carrie, you mentioned S Corp versus C Corp. What is the difference between that one letter?
So C Corp is its own little entity. So when I set up my own payroll, the company paid my wages and it paid both sides of my FICA. So I love that. With an S Corp, you do the same thing. You have to pay yourself a reasonable wage, but you can also take a draw, and the draw is not FICA taxable, but there's a lot of rules that you need to make sure you're not paying yourself $10,000 a year when you could get a job somewhere else making $100,000. You have to pay yourself a reasonable salary. And then if the business does well, then there's some rules around the draws that you can take and how they're taxable. Those wouldn't go through your payroll. So the payroll service would just be around your W-2.
So are there any other business entity types that we should talk about as far as how they might impact how the owner would get paid?
Partnerships is probably a tricky one too, because when we're going down the list of who we pay our partners at 1099, if there's single member LLC, which is another fancy word for sole proprietor, which is really your Schedule C, they get a 1099, but so do partners. So I would imagine there's some funny rules around partnerships and wages and payroll and that sort of thing, but I'm not the expert. I know they get a 1099, so that's a little different.
So I'll defer to the experts. And how does that play into with partnerships?
So I'll be honest with you, I've seen it go a couple of different ways with partners where, they definitely don't have to be on payroll. They can do a draw or they can't take taxable wages. A lot of times with a partnership, again, it's kind of how it's set up with the IRS. So, we typically involve the CPA right out the gates. A lot of times too, with partners being involved in the organization, the CPA they're working with is also looking out for their personal best interest from a tax standpoint. So, does it make sense to run anything through on their personal income, or, how would they do that? Does it need to be W-2 taxable? Does it need to be done through a draw or distribution? And there's definitely different options. I know one thing that we do is, have that conversation up front so we can strategize on what makes most sense. And I think that also leads into much bigger than just payroll. A lot of times the partners are looking at, where else do I have income coming in? Where else do I have write-offs? And kind of take that into the picture as well before just putting themselves on payroll.
So typically your customers are going to be corporations, C Corps, S Corps, typically. Okay.
Typically, yeah.
I mean, other entities are like trusts and their payrolls around that.
So we have had some trusts, we've had some household employers. I mean, the one thing I'll say is we do work with sole proprietorships as well as partnerships, because anyone who has employees, that's normally where we see a lot of the people coming to payroll. There's just obviously the second component, which is what today's about, just with the owners.
So I can still be a Schedule C. It's just I can't put myself on payroll. I can put my employees. Okay, that's correct. Glad you brought that up, because I was running down the wrong trail on that one, because I was only thinking about me.
Which is important. We're very important. You're
the
and not surprising.
Owners need to get paid, or they get kind of cranky, Dan.
Yeah.
So yeah, good to know. So you can be a C, you can be a Schedule C, you can be
still
a
have payroll.
Single
you can
member.
Still have payroll as a Schedule C, but you can't pay yourself as part of payroll.
I would not be getting a W-2.
No. And I think that's one thing that sometimes sole proprietors don't realize, or Schedule Cs don't realize, is that if you have employees, you still have to do things the right way and do like quarterly filings and all of that, because obviously they get the benefit of not having to do that if they don't have employees, which maybe then turns even to a further conversation of maybe they should be an LLC or a C Corp instead.
It gets really, I had a customer that I was working on, and I was like, what are all these fines? They decided to pay all of their employees 1099s, and then they got like whacked by the IRS with this. I don't remember what the word was, but I was like, I've never heard of it. And they said, we're now putting everyone on payroll. I was like, good idea. But they got like double penalized. It was ugly.
Yeah, because that brings up a good point. That if an owner is like, well, if I can't be on payroll, nobody's on payroll, I'm just going to pay everybody under the table.
There's under the table doesn't get you a deduction.
No.
All right. Well, that's kind of a good. Got a lot of good nuggets there with entity types and how the owner gets paid, and how it affects payroll in general. Thank you, Rachel and Kate. I think you were there. You're not like a cardboard cutout, right? Rachel was doing most of the talking.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you yeah.
Go ahead. Nope.
Well, you were going some. No.
So our other topic of the day we're going to talk about with the workshop involves around something that I saw in our Facebook group, Carrie, was about suspicious emails.
Oh yeah.
So there's a lot of emails that float around there, and maybe Kate and Rachel, working for ADP, I know every time we see a correspondence, there's this is from outside your organization disclaimer at the bottom of your emails, especially when you forward things back to us. But phishing emails and suspicious emails and bad actors that are out there that are pretending to be people who they're not. It happens, right? There's no way to stop someone dressing up as a police officer from showing up at your door, whether they're a police officer or not, right? So when you get an email that says, we've suspended your account, or thank you for your order when you didn't order something, and it looks like legitimate, that is buyer beware, right? Beware of that, because that is where people get themselves into trouble. So we had a post on our Facebook group where it was, I don't know, do you have that up, Carrie? Because I was going to use some.
I can try to find it. I can find it while you chat.
It was
Facebook.
Now I've lost myself.
Okay.
There it
is. Get yourself back while I'm pulling it up.
Yeah. So it was an email that was sent to a customer. It said, thank you for your order, and they actually did recently submit an order for QuickBooks, so it did seem legitimate. Okay, so looking at this, you can see that there in the subject there's a space between Quick and Books.
Yep, right here.
And even
They
in
got the
email,
logo, but it looks funny.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you can see in the, we receive your request.
QuickBooks is spelled wrong again.
QuickBooks is spelled with a space, and anybody who has worked with QuickBooks for any length of time knows the B is capitalized.
And look, and it's correct underneath the stolen logo.
Yeah, because that's just the logo. But you can see everywhere that it says that QuickBooks is typed, there's a space and there's a.
Oh, yeah. And look, it's QuickBook. They capitalized it, but they made 2 words out of it. And then down here,
right. So this is a legitimate reason to be leery of this email, because of course the only thing they want you to do is call a number or click a link, right? And that's where things are going to start going south from that point. But best practices when you see these sort of things, one is to hover, don't click, but hover over the links that are in there, or look in the from address.
The from might be underneath QuickBooks. You're going to see like Yahoo or some.
Yeah. Typically you'll see a Gmail address or something that is not at intuit.com, right? Or not at QuickBooks.com. Kate and Rachel, do you have best
ADP
practices
issues
that you see from ADP side of things?
Yeah, similar to the hovering over, looking at the app for the email. One thing I personally do is I would Google that phone number and see if that 800 number comes back up as QuickBooks or as ADP or as whatever scam is calling me. Because I just Googled that number and it shows like all buyers beware, don't answer this phone call. So that's one good thing to use, is just Google the phone number. And if it's not tying back to the company that sent that email, and then if anything either looks too good to be true or too ridiculous, always a red flag.
Yeah. And Carrie and I, we work with, QuickBooks pretty extensively. We know that order number is not a QuickBooks or an Intuit order number, so we would see that. But the thing is, I read an article when I worked at Intuit that it was talking about, from if Carrie and I looked at this, we go, that's a scam, that there's something, that's a phishing type of email, because of either grammatical errors or misspellings.
Crazy.
Right. But there's actually this article was all about the mindset of those. They do those things on purpose. Right, like they misspell things on purpose, because that's the type of person who would actually click on or call that number by overlooking things that are obviously misspelled or grammatically incorrect. So they actually pepper those things in there so that they weed out the people who would scrutinize these sort of things. So so there's actually I gave him a little bit of props for that, because it's like, because some people make them look identical, to QuickBooks emails or ADP emails, or, make them look legitimate. But somebody to sprinkle those apparent, those obvious glaring things to the, normal person who would see those things and go, no, that's clearly a scam. That's there on purpose. So I wanted to share.
Now there is a place where you can't you forward this email to spoof@intuit.com?
Yeah,
okay.
That's where, still my thunder.
Sorry, I just gave away well, I'm thinking ADP probably has one of those too.
Yeah, I was going to ask if ADP has a place for these things. But it used to be spoof@intuit.com is where you would forward these security notices.
Right here.
But they don't do that anymore. So it's now just security.intuit.com, and then the security center here, you can see the security notices that have been previously reported. You can go and report a suspicious
what does that do?
Email. And
click that button. What does it do? Click it.
Oh, I did. Hold on. It's on the other.
I can't click it. It's on his screen.
There, it sends an email to security@intuit.com. No longer spoof.
Okay, so security, and then I could forward my email.
Exactly. But here you can see all of the phishing emails that were in there, and read it. So you can search at the top. So like if like if you wanted to type in order, right? So there's a purchase order receipt, and then it will give you a sample of what it would look like, right? So if you see something like that, then you're like, okay, that lets me know that I'm not the only one, in this boat. I can delete this email because it has been flagged by Intuit as a phishing email. So, what is phishing, and why do they misspell it?
It's not for fish.
Yeah, and it's not. They're not catching. Well, they are trying to catch something, but and it's not the Vermont band either.
Oh, that one. The PHI. So they're trying to fish for money. Scammers.
They're fishing for people to
innocent victims.
And it like fishing, it's a bait type of thing. They cast this out, and then hopefully somebody's on the hook, and then next thing you know, your bank account's either drained or you've got multiple credit cards set up in your name that you didn't sign up for.
Or I actually had this happen a year during COVID. I hired a part-timer, and I sent it, and it automatically sent an email from my email that said, I'm really busy and I would love to get everyone a bonus from Lowe's. And she went and got all these $500 credit cards and said, because and then they told her report and screenshot all the cards. So she texted me a copy of all those. It might've been Home Depot. And I said, what is this? And she ran back and canceled it, but it was a close call. She thought she was helping me out. I mean, because I am busy all the time, but I wouldn't.
And I'm always the one to file my taxes on April 15th at 11:59 midnight.
Yeah.
And I did that, and then it got rejected, saying that we already got a return under this Social Security number. So someone tried to submit a tax return, so I had to go through this whole rigmarole. So I'm one of those people that gets an e-file pin mailed to them by the IRS every year in order to file my taxes.
Now they got to keep up with. I was gonna say, now they got to keep up with what state you're in, where they got to mail it.
Right. Well, it just goes to my one mailing address. Now that it actually is one mailing address.
We had that happen too. That happened to Tim. So yeah, and we try to stay ahead of these things, but there it is.
Yeah. I mean, strange robocalls and things like that, but you can't forward those to security@intuit.com. Does ADP have a security center or a place to go where you can see report security alerts like that?
Yeah, so we have very similar, a full security center that you can go in. You can see any past issues that have come up, and then we've got just a basic email. It's spam2@adp.com that any associate or external party can send an email to that they think is spam.
And do you get tested on this sort of thing? I know, like, large corporations, so like throw out phishing emails on purpose to see what employee is click happy.
Yeah, I don't know if they send out like fake phishing emails, but they do. We have training every year that we have to complete compliance training. And then if you click on a phishing email like myself, ADP's nice, wonderful pop-ups typically will catch it, and then you have to attend an additional training. So you look out for it.
So you're speaking from personal experience.
Yep, I am. This is kind of a scary one. I have a client that he was not a CPA, but he did work with small businesses. He was like a consultant. He was on payroll with ADP, and his email actually got hacked. And the link that it sent out was saying, please view copies of these 941s. And of course, being in payroll, I see a client wanting me to look at a 941. The first thing I do is click, and it was a phishing scam, and it got sent to like every single person in his inbox. So it's definitely like something to be aware of.
Wow.
Some people who are always dealing with payroll. I mean, that was always my concern, when working with accountants. I mean, accountants and bookkeepers, you have access, to a lot of
Data.
personally identifiable information, social security numbers of all of the employees, unless they're obfuscated, credit card numbers, merchant accounts, banking information. I mean, there's a lot of information. And I know that there's a lot of people on the dark web who would love to have access to your login, right? So just keep that in mind. Do multi-factor authentication. As those codes that are sent are annoying, they're there for a reason, and that helps keep you and your clients safe from malicious bad actors. So,
everywhere.
On that note, on that happy note, we're gonna wrap up today's workshop. Next week we're gonna talk about. Do we have what is next year's next up? We're gonna talk about something. I've lost my topics for next week, but we should be joined also by
payroll.
Yeah, it's gonna be something with payroll. I think it's the forms. So yeah, the edge of your seat. We'll talk about the employee and contractor forms that need to be filled out for paying either employees or contractors, and we're going to be joined by Davo. I think they'll be joining us next week. Davo is an interesting sales tax compliance app, so he'll be joining us. And he's also an RVer, so we have that to talk about as well. So we're actually going to try to catch up with each other in Maine. Later this summer. So sales tax stuff and workers forms. So yeah, set your calendar for the excitement.
We'll try to make it entertaining. These things, we can make a balance sheet entertaining. We can entertain this up.
Right.
You have to understand it if you own a business or support them. So
Bye, guys.
Week, and we'll
Bye,
see you next time on Workshop Wednesday.
Thanks, y'all.
Have a great week.